I love me some heavy-handed tackling from Lisandro Martinez. That's some old-school Stevie Nicol defending. That's what we love. But, James, let me come to you in this one. And I know it's pretty far-fetched, but any chance that Thomas Tuchel could be enticed and back out of an England deal? Because, as we said, he was the one that was really very much linked with this job as well. And now the timing of this, as both Oggy and Rob have explained, just seems far from ideal to get any sort of manager that the fans will feel Manchester United deserves.
Yeah, no is the short answer to the Tuchel question. Insofar as, I mean, the FA literally in their statement have said he signed a contract. So, okay, he doesn't start work until January the 1st, but he has signed that deal. He's fully committed to it. I just listened to the guys talk there. It just made me think about just going back to Gareth Southgate. Well, two things. One is that I don't know what it says about where United are as a club at the moment, that England have just completed a managerial search for the national team job and decided that there is no suitable English candidate and gone for a German in Thomas Tuchel. And yet we're talking about Manchester United now potentially having two Englishmen in Gareth Southgate and Graham Potter as two of the leading candidates for the job at Old Trafford. I don't know quite what that says about where United are. Maybe everything that Oggy and Rob have sort of alluded to. But also, just on Southgate, I know that he's ruled himself out in theory in saying that he doesn't want to take a club job for a year. But I'm reminded when this came up when he was still England manager, and he gave a very, as he sort of quite often does, he gave a very good response when he was sort of linked with the United job ahead of an England game, where he said, look, you know, I can't remember if he's president or chair of the League Managers Association. He has a prominent role at the League Managers Association anyway. And he says, look, it's so disrespectful to ask me not only about a manager who's still in post, but also when I have my role with the LMA, you know, what can I say about another managerial position aside from, I hope that, you know, I want to give them support. He gives his time for the LMA. He goes to the dinners and he does the work to help support managers who are in the LMA, in that organisation. And I just wonder whether him putting it out there that he's not going to work for a year was an attempt to just sort of dampen that speculation a little bit, take his name out of the conversation, and not have his availability act as an extra element of pressure on managers who were struggling in their current roles. And I don't know. I haven't heard anything to that effect, but I just wonder whether, knowing Gareth a little bit, whether there was an element of thinking, look, I'll do this sort of because it's in the best interest of everybody, really. And if United did really want to make a play for him and they did say, look, we are offering you this job, I think he'd find it very difficult to turn down, wouldn't he?
It's interesting you say that, James, because I've had a conversation with somebody this morning. I was speaking to somebody this morning before all this kicked off, and I was told that Southgate, I was asking, why did Gareth Southgate, say what he said? And what I was told was that he's basically been warned off. He's basically said, don't go anywhere near it because there's too much going on at the club it's too much of a mess. Why risk your reputation, your legacy as a coach that does everything by the book properly, with a bit of calm and measured thinking? Why risk that for what could be a 12-month stint and you get sacked? So, like James said, if Manchester United come calling and offering the job, it's a very hard job to turn down in normal circumstances. But right now, it's a mess. It's a job that it's a reputation killer, the Man United job, because you go there. I mean, look at all the managers that have been there since Sir Alex Ferguson. David Moyes took him years and years to overcome what happened there. Louis van Gaal hasn't really had a serious job since in club football. Jose Mourinho, well, he's not been anywhere near the level he was at before he went to Man United. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer hasn't worked since. And what's going to happen to Erik ten Hag? You can bet.
Right, but what about the Dan Ashworth link though? Because I hear everything you're saying there, but obviously Ineos are in place now, and there's a lot made. And I hear so many mixed messages about this. Whether Dan Ashworth and Gareth are actually quite close. Some people say they don't actually speak that often. What's
it's not really the Dan Ashworth link. It's the Dave Brailsford link. Gareth Southgate and Dave Brailsford have got a long-standing relationship through leaders in sport and Ineos. So yes, he's worked with Dan Ashworth in the past at the FA and, in a quite close relationship in the sense that technical director and manager of the England team. But the connection at Man United is Dave Brailsford. And Gareth Southgate has, advisors that are very close to Ineos as well. And also you have to factor in the Dan Ashworth element is Graham Potter, because Graham Potter worked for Dan Ashworth at Brighton. So that's why Potter and Southgate are so high on the list, because they have connections with the club. But, I think, Dave Brailsford at one point was really keen on Gareth Southgate as England manager. Now, whether what happened during the Euro, well, prior to the Euro. There's no way they could. I can put this. Had there not been a tournament this summer, and had Erik ten Hag been sacked after the cup final, Gareth Southgate would have been a fairly easy appointment to make. The situation that put Gareth Southgate out of the running was because he wouldn't address or even think about negotiating the job before the Euros are done. And the Euros were done with England right at the end. So United couldn't wait until the day before their first pre-season game to appoint a manager. So the timing didn't work for Gareth Southgate. Now, as the months have progressed, the situation at Man United has become, I think, much worse, to the point where Gareth Southgate might think, you know something, if I can just take a year out of the game and assess my options, it's probably wiser than going into Manchester United now. Man United next summer might be a better job. But right now, where they're 14th in the league, a million miles off the top four, they're only going to fail this season because they're not going to finish in the top four. So you're on a thankless task. How can you make a success of this season if you're the new Man United manager? FA Cup, Carabao Cup? Well, the last guy won both of those. He's just been sacked.
Well, just on that point too, I'm going to flip it a little and bring it back to Erik ten Hag with you, Rob, because all those points that Oggy says right now, we do know that there have been organizational, administrative issues at Manchester United behind the scenes, which, you know, even Cristiano Ronaldo, remember, told us that it's a hot mess back there and that it's probably going to take more than a manager to fix things off. So do you feel like there were situations, more than one situation, where it wasn't necessarily Erik ten Hag letting Manchester United down, but he was being let down by what was going on behind the scenes and potentially by some of the players?
Yeah, I must say I do feel a little bit sorry for him. And I'm certainly not absolving him of blame, because he will be the first to admit that he's made a lot of mistakes as Man United manager. You don't get sacked if you don't make mistakes. But there are situations where I do feel a little bit sorry for him. I mean, one of the things that we throw at Erik ten Hag quite often is a lack of goals. And United have struggled for goals pretty much since he came in. But 2 summers ago, they were looking for a striker and Ten Hag wanted Harry Kane. And he thought that the money was there to go to Tottenham and make a real attempt to sign Harry Kane as an established world-class centre-forward. Well, United turned around and told him that they weren't going to try and do that. Instead, that they were going to target Rasmus Højlund. Now, Rasmus Højlund, it may end up being a very, very good player, but he's still very, very young. He's got no track record of regular goal scoring. And he's been thrown into this situation now where he's got to be United's main striker. He's responsible for scoring the bulk of the goals, and he just hasn't been able to do it. And even at the time when United signed Højlund, there was noises around the people that knew Ten Hag saying, well, Højlund may turn out to be a great player, but he's not ready to be first choice. Really, if he's going to sign for a big club, he needs to come in and be second choice to an established striker. You know, maybe he plays 20 or 30 games and scores 5 or 10 goals and he gets away with that. But as United's main striker, you just can't do that. So Ten Hag has got every right to feel a little bit. I know you put the graphic there of the signings that he's made, and you know, he is responsible for some of those. The Antony one in particular is a disaster. You know, there's no two ways of saying that. He was responsible for driving that deal. They paid over the odds and it's not worked out. But there are other situations, particularly with the recruitment of players. And, you know, certainly that centre forward role that they were looking for 2 summers ago, where Erik ten Hag would have every right to feel like he's been let down. And I'm not suggesting that Harry Kane fixes all of Man United's problems, but you'd have to assume that Harry Kane would have scored more goals in the last 18 months than Rasmus Højlund. And maybe, you know, the results and some of the performances would have been a little bit better. So, you know, there are situations where I feel a little bit sorry for Ten Hag. I don't think that he was really made fully aware of the financial position when he came in. It's really, you know, hamstrung him in certain deals that he thought that they could do and they haven't been able to do. You know, again, you know, he spent the best part of 600 million, so it's difficult to feel too sorry for him. But there are situations where he wanted players targeted that the club said, well, we can't do that. This is a player that we're going to give you. You know, the Rasmus Højlund situation particularly is the one that Ten Hag can feel quite aggrieved about, because I think that if they signed an established centre forward 2 summers ago, he would have had a lot better chance of being successful as Man United manager, and we may not be sitting here now talking about him being sacked.
Well, Ruud van Nistelrooy, obviously now interim manager, probably not that big of a change considering he works so closely with Erik ten Hag and the Dutch links and the Ajax links as well. But Oggy, let me go to you. What would a Ruud van Nistelrooy Manchester United look like? We know that he does know Erik ten Hag very well and his style or identity, or what we thought would be his identity, but he also knows a very successful Manchester United identity as well. So where does he take it now?
Well, first of all, I think Ruud's kind of lucky to be given the interim job because he is part of the problem. You know, he's part of Erik Ten Hag's coaching staff, and his input hasn't made much difference. Let's be honest. United have barely scored a goal this season, and he's supposed to be one of the best goal scorers we've ever seen. So, what will Ruud van Nistelrooy Man United look like? Well, he's only had 1 year in senior management before, and that was at PSV Eindhoven, where he had a young team, and he did well, but he didn't win the Dutch league. So, you know, I think we're all kind of waiting to see what Ruud's football team looks like. I've been told that he's a guy that will make big decisions. So what does that big decision look like at Man United? Well, I guess, you know, it's do you drop Bruno Fernandes, who's not played well this season, or do you kind of banish people out of the team that haven't played well? Well, I think Ten Hag's already done that. I think it's more a case of just trying to get some consistency into the team. You know, injuries have been a problem, but try and find a way to make the players maybe focus a little bit more on avoiding the mistakes that have led to so many late goals. I just think in the immediate scenario, it's a case of just a new face and a new voice, because the players have clearly lost faith in Ten Hag. You can see that by performances. I don't think it was working, but I kind of disagree with what Rob was saying as well about feeling sorry for Ten Hag. He spent an awful lot of money, and you know, you have to question why so many players have arrived at Man United under his tenure that played from before at Ajax. You know, the last time a player moved to the Premier League having had a successful, you know, stint in the Premier League after playing in the Dutch league was probably Christian Eriksen at Tottenham 10 years ago. And you know, Eriksen did well, but he wasn't a superstar. You have to go back even further, probably to when Luis Suarez joined Liverpool earlier than that, or when Ruud van Nistelrooy went to United from PSV over 20 years ago. The Dutch league doesn't generate players capable of playing successfully in the Premier League anymore. But the Man United team is stocked full of Ajax players, which might explain why they're in the bottom half of the table. So while Ten Hag might not have got the players he wanted, that might be a good thing, because the ones he did want haven't done very well.
All right. Well, for those who don't know, Oggy is incapable of feeling any sort of emotion, so I don't expect him to have any empathy for anyone, much less Erik Ten Hag. Oggy, we're going to let you dip out because you do have to catch a train and you do have to file. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to continue a little longer with James and Rob, though, because still a lot of things to unpack. James, let me go to you with this one, because we're just one of the names that we haven't talked about in terms of a manager that could come in that has been on the list, or is someone I know very well, and that's Xavi from Barcelona. Recently, they showed a photo of him and his child who had on a Manchester United jersey, and that was just less than 24 hours ago. What do you make of this link? Do you feel like there could be any weight to it? Is Xavi someone that you think could bring a certain style and identity that we know has been lacking at Manchester United?
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I mean, this story did the rounds, a couple of weeks ago, and you know, was played down, I think, at the time by people at United. Again, Rob would know better than me on that one, but I mean, look, they could probably get him, and he would bring with him a certain gravitas, and I imagine that, you know, as a name, given obviously what he achieved as a player in particular, he would probably generate more excitement than a Gareth Southgate appointment would, or a Graham Potter appointment would among supporters. But does his body of work as a manager suggest that he could come in and sort a mess like this out? I don't think so. I think they'd be taking a big risk by appointing a manager who doesn't know the league. And I'm not suggesting that Xavi couldn't adapt, but again, it's another element to, you know, lending itself to yet another transitional period that United look like they're going to have to go through. Look, I mean, they've been down the road of sort of being, you know, almost lovingly looking at the big name and thinking this is the guy who can come in and solve the problem a bit, you know, the sort of Jose Mourinho kind of style. I know that Xavi doesn't necessarily have that kind of managerial pedigree, but you know what I mean? That kind of cachet, that's almost celebrity status that Xavi would have because of what a phenomenal player he's been in, you know, and obviously what he's done so far as a manager is hugely promising. But it wouldn't particularly convince me, I have to say, as an option. Rob, I mean, again, you're obviously closer to it than I am. Do you think there's much in it?
No, I mean, you're right. The story did do the rounds about a week ago, and it was played down by both United and the people that were close to Xavi. I think Xavi has indicated that he quite would like to take his sabbatical and take a bit of time out, that the Barcelona job took quite a lot out of him. Quite disappointed, I think, with the way that ended. So I would be quite surprised. The issue, though, I mean, we've touched on it just previously, is that there aren't that many names out there now. You know, not to hark back to the same point, but the pool of managers that they were dealing with in the summer was a lot wider than it is now. And so names like Xavi, who is out of work, that would be very easy to appoint, do get thrown up. And James is exactly right. You know, Xavi, if you look at it, just on the bare facts, doesn't seem like a great fit. You know, hasn't worked in the Premier League before, hasn't got a massive amount of managerial experience apart from being in charge of Barcelona. It would be quite a big risk. I'm not suggesting that he would fail. You know, the point is that you just don't know. And United at the moment, it doesn't really feel like a club that can take a risk with that. Thomas Frank, for example, knows the league from being in charge at Brentford, has had success with Brentford in the Premier League. Obviously, you know, moving up to Man United would be a big step up. I think more than anything, that Man United need the right fit. And I've spoken about this on our podcast in the past, that, you know, managers are only as good as the fit that they find themselves in. And really, you know, United are looking for someone who is going to slot into that new structure with Omar Barada as CEO, Dan Ashworth taking a lot of responsibility as sporting director, Jason Wilcox with a lot of responsibility as technical director. So they are looking for someone who's going to slot in seamlessly into that structure. It's one of the reasons why that they were rumming and ahhing a little bit about Thomas Tuchel in the summer. They didn't feel that Thomas Tuchel was a fantastic fit for what they had in mind, and actually think that it was reciprocated from Tuchel's side as well, that he didn't feel that he was a great fit for the structure that they wanted as well. So it will be very interesting to see which direction United go in. And you've also got to take into account fan reaction. We've mentioned the likes of Gareth Southgate and Graham Potter. You know, from what I have heard and seen from Man United fans when those two names have been linked, is the United fans just don't want either of them. And it would be very hard to appoint a Gareth Southgate, because ultimately you're asking him to start not only on the back foot because of the timing of this decision, but also on the back foot with the fans. And once you start on the back foot as a manager, it's very, very hard to turn around. We saw that with Benitez at Everton. You know, Benitez is a great manager, proved himself to be a great manager, but started on the back foot at Everton, never won the fans round, and ultimately ended in disaster. And I would be worried if Southgate decided to take the job, and that the same thing would happen. I just think that, you know, we've had this conversation since the start of this show, that the timing of this is really strange, because these are all the issues that are thrown up now that perhaps weren't there in the summer. They've given themselves a really, really big task now to find the right man to fill this job, because it's going to be tough. And I think what may happen is that they may give it to Ruud van Nistelrooy, and we may see Van Nistelrooy take it until the end of the season. And then in next summer, you've got a little bit more time to make an informed choice, because at the moment it just doesn't feel the right time to be looking for a permanent successor. The danger though with that is that essentially you're writing off this season. You know, you're basically telling Ruud van Nistelrooy, steady the ship. We're not expecting any fireworks. Just steady the ship, win a couple of games, get us up the table, and then we'll make a decision. And well, United fans may look at that and go, well, why are you writing off a season? You know, that's not fair. We want to see progress right away. If you're going to make the decision to sack Ten Hag, the idea is that you make progress right away. I just think that it all goes back to timing, and that the timing is very, very strange from my point of view.
Well, there are two types of sackings generally, aren't there? There's the sacking where you know you've got your next guy lined up and you're just waiting for the moment to do it. Look at the one that always springs to mind with that is Pochettino at Tottenham, and within 24 hours, Jose Mourinho's in the building. You know, so whatever they say about that situation, they obviously set that up, and it got to a point where the Pochettino situation couldn't carry on, and they got their guy. So there's that type of sacking, or there's one where it just falls apart. And as much as they want to continue going down that road, there's just no way it can carry on, and all sides acknowledge that. And then the search starts. And that's where I think United are now. I don't think, and as we've already talked about, they've obviously spoken to a few potential candidates in the summer. They've done some thinking about this, but I can't see there being a quick appointment. Obviously, the statement says it's Ruud in the interim. You suspect that could go on for quite some time until they try and find... I mean, look, they are 14th in the league, right? They're not far off being in a relegation battle. You call Sam Allardyce when you're in a relegation battle.
Oh, I love me some Big Sam. But you know what? I'm still a fan of the Xavi appointment, but that's just because I'm a little biased there, having known Xavi quite well through La Liga. But Rob, you said for Ruud van Nistelrooy next is to steady the ship, win a couple games, or at least get a couple of good results under your belt. For the meantime, for you, what does steadying the ship for Ruud van Nistelrooy look like? Because he's got some domestic cup games coming up. You've got the league as well. As James just said, they're 14th in the league. That's flirting closer to relegation than anything of glory. They've got European games coming up as well. So how do you steady this ship that really has been rocking and feeling like it's been sinking for the better part of a decade?
Well,
yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean, he's got the advantage in that he's immediately very, very popular because he was popular as a player. So the fans who turn up at Old Trafford on Wednesday night for that Leicester game will be immediately behind him. So he's got that on his side, and it does help. It seems like a minor point, I'm sure, but it does help. In the short term, really, it's just consistency. You know, United haven't won back-to-back Premier League games this year, so if they were to show some kind of consistency, stop losing games, be a little bit more free going forward, you know, score a few more goals. That's one of the main criticisms of Ten Hag, that the team just don't score enough goals. Show that you've got a bit more attacking intent, that the team is capable of scoring a few more goals. I'm certainly not, you know, United fans aren't expecting Ruud van Nistelrooy to take charge of his first Premier League game against Chelsea next Sunday and win 4 or 5-0. That's just not going to happen. But if Van Nistelrooy shows signs that the team is heading in the right direction, they are playing a little bit more with a little bit more freedom in an attacking sense. They're a little bit harder to beat defensively, and just start stringing some results together. That will help. I don't think that anyone is expecting Ruud van Nistelrooy to set Old Trafford on fire with performances. It's just, you know, he hasn't been a manager since 2023 when he left PSV, so he's not been in this situation for a while himself. I just think he needs to show, or the team needs to show, a little bit of consistency, that they are going in the right direction. It's one of the key messages from United today, that they were determined to give Ten Hag time, but they became convinced that he just wasn't able to turn things around. So if Van Nistelrooy can show that they are heading in the right direction, even just with a few minor things, you know, just in terms of the way that they attack and they try and score goals, I think would help. I think if you can get that, I think there's 4 games now between now and the next international break. You know, 4 decent results, get to the international break, and then take stock. It won't take much to get United fans behind the Ruud van Nistelrooy team, and he will know that. So if it starts with a good result against Leicester on Wednesday, then he has every chance of having a successful time in charge as caretaker.
Yeah, well, don't play Mazraoui as a number 10. One.
That is what I was just going to come to you about, James, because literally I was going to say none of us have been managers, so it's hard for us to talk tactics, but let's talk tactics a little bit, because I feel like a lot of the fans do say that is where they felt let down by Erik ten Hag. I mean, you especially cover the London clubs very closely, and for example, for so long, this was a conversation we had about Chelsea, wondering what's their identity, wondering what's the tactics, even under big names like a Mauricio Pochettino. But Enzo Maresca comes in, and immediately after 1, 2, 3 games, we know exactly what he wants to do, how he wants Chelsea to play. Similar things happening at Brighton. You see Unai Emery going to Aston Villa. We get that idea. But for Erik ten Hag at Manchester United, for 2 years, we still kept asking the same questions. And then his tactics came under question again just yesterday against West Ham. So, James, do you feel like he let himself down in sort of the tactics department as well?
Yeah, because there was no, even right to the end, it was basically a collection of individuals that you hoped were going to go, somebody was going to do something. That's all it was watching United. There wasn't, I'd say in the first season, even, you know, when they did show signs of progress, there was a kind of broad structure there and you could kind of see the patterns of play, but they just never really built on it. And it just totally unraveled over that second year and then obviously into this year to the point where it was just a collection of players thrown out on the pitch. And what does that say about the coaching setup? You know, I think it was Jamie Carragher who said that this is the worst coach team in the Premier League. And when you look at the spaces and the lack of application without the ball, and then the lack of structure and patterns of play in possession, it is a damning indictment on the manager and, let's be honest, the coaching staff, of which Ruud van Nistelrooy is a part of, that there's not more to see. Now, he's obviously, Ten Hag's been sacked this morning. Now, Monday afternoon, whenever they've trained, will be a recovery session. So Ruud van Nistelrooy is going to have 1 training session before they play Leicester. There's not a lot he's going to be able to do in that time. They'll then have another recovery session. He'll have 2 days, and then they play Chelsea. So he's going to have 3 proper sessions. And I really don't think we could judge him on anything that they do against Leicester. I think it would be more just pick 11 players who are in the best physical condition, send them out there and hope for the best. Because let's be honest, that's pretty much what United have been doing for quite some time anyway. But I think he'll look at Sunday and sort of say, right, no one's going to judge me on Leicester. I mean, if they get knocked out, I think it's more of a reflection of the general malaise, given he's only had 1 session. But if he can go and engineer a result against Chelsea, if he can beat Chelsea, and look, these 4 games before the international break, they're all at home, that'll help him. As Rob says, people like Ruud van Nistelrooy, the fans are already on his side from his success as a player. So he's got an opportunity to generate a little bit of momentum. But he's really got to use those 3 sessions to I mean, I wouldn't even say take the handbrake off, because I don't even know if they were driving a car. It was more like a pedal bike that was just weaving all over the road, you know? Like, but I'm reminded of, do you remember when Mourinho left and then Solskjaer came in, and I think it was Cardiff away that they won 4 or 5, and out of nowhere, they suddenly started playing this. You know, the players look liberated. That's the kind of effect that he's got to have. He's got to be able to somehow inject some confidence into these players, because there's obviously a core of talented players there who you would expect to beat Leicester at home, and you assume that Leicester will change their team given that they're fighting for Premier League survival. And Chelsea are showing really good signs of coming together, but they're not the finished article. So there is an opportunity this week for Ruud van Nistelrooy there. But what I think more than anything is you just got to get some confidence into these players. Encourage them to express themselves and give the fans something that they can cling to, something that they can look at to say, okay, they're fighting here, they're running here, they're trying to make things happen, because they've been sleepwalking for far, far too long, and they need someone to wake them up.